Hello, my name's Nathan. I make plane guides for Ace Combat 7 and help out a lot. Recently, I was going to make this guide much more quickly than I was going to originally, but things have happened in real life, like my grandmother passing and me being super depressed, so it really put a hinge inside of me making these kinds of videos. So with all of that out of the way, I wanted to get on to energy planes and energy fighting because there's quite a few people on the Discord and other people that I've met that keep asking me over and over and over again for probably about the past 6 or 8 months, Nathan, when are you going to release the energy guide video? So here it is. In my opinion, there are two different kinds of energy aircraft in Ace Combat 7. We're going to separate the two classes into what's called low speed high mobility and high acceleration. I'll talk about high acceleration later as it's a little more complicated. The core idea behind these three planes is that when they're at around 600 kilometers per hour, they receive a massive mobility buff. The reason they're called energy fighters is because you gain energy, you turn, you gain energy, you turn, and that's how you pretty much win turn fights. It's pretty basic. Each plane more or less has their nuances, but the Rafale M and the F15E perform pretty much exactly the same. The MiG-21 has a problem with the acceleration at the low end of the band. The MiG-21's response is that it has the best roll rate of all of these fighters, and that at 2,000 cost, it just absolutely overperforms any other plane at that bracket. In my opinion, these are the truly competitive planes of the energy fighters because you can actually put up with PSM fighters with these planes. Ergo, if you're actually good enough, you can put PSM users in their place with these. I would consider LSHM planes to be within their own bracket. Anything that's outside of this is usually a high acceleration kind of plane. These planes require a different mindset than just typically using your energy and turning. There's a lot of other planes that I could use as an example, but the F15C and the YF-23 are the two prime dogfighting and sniping examples that I could find amongst the planes. The main reason being the F15C having SASMs that are really good in head-on passes, and the YF-23 having high-velocity anti-airs, which just absolutely destroy in Battle Royale and at ranged fights. The Typhoon gets an honorable mention, but I don't have the PNG file for that. It's one of the best planes for fighting at higher speeds with high-capacity anti-airs, and is extremely defensive. First, what I'm going to explain is the LSHM planes, and I'm going to show a few clips and offer some commentary about me playing it using those. For LSHM aircraft, you have to pretty much be ready and watch your opponent to see what they're going to do. Here's a quick example of me going up against a Quam using F-22. When you're using an LSHM plane, you want to always be on the lookout for what your opponent is doing. You also want to stack as much acceleration as you can because it helps out so much for the low energy dogfights that you'll be doing. This F-22 user made a positional error and I was able to capitalize on it pretty easily. The rest of the fight pretty much goes the exact same way as that merge did. With the high capacity anti-airs, you want to force head-ons or basically shove your plane into theirs to make sure the missiles hit. The general idea of managing your speed comes in pretty importantly here. You'll want to notice that I try not to drop below 400 and try to stay around 600 to about 800-ish and get the energy back for another high G turn. What I also like to do is if they're in a spot that's bad for me, I will speed up to around 1400 to give myself 2 high G turns. Out of those three planes, I would consider the Rafale and the MiG-21 to be the easier two out of the three. The 6AMs and the TLS on the F-15 Strike Eagle are pretty tough to use in my opinion. I also don't have a lot of hours personally, but anyone who is very experienced, you can go ahead and comment. This will probably be the last clip for the Rafale M. After this, I'm going to show some SASM clips and some F-15C footage to show a stark contrast to the type of turn and burn behavior you're seeing here. I'll be using the F-15C in this video, and I'll be commenting about some of the nuances of how to use high acceleration planes and how my mindset is whenever I'm turn fighting and fighting in a battle royale lobby. A lot of people think that you have to be full throttle in order to dodge using the F15C, and this is actually quite opposite the case. The F15C is actually superior to the MiG-31 in its dogfighting capability. As you can see here, he's just raw accelerating, and when he turns, he doesn't have the pitch capability to high G turn and get around those missiles that I shot at him. One of the main advantages to using a high acceleration plane is its defensive capability. With a certain build on the F15C, which I'll pretty much give at the end of this video, you become a turning accelerative monster in dogfighting. You can actually annoy people so badly that they'll complain about it because you can just turn around and turn over them so quickly. In speaking for the videos about the Rafale's turning capability at lower speeds, for the F15C, the turning speed is actually around 1400 plus to around 2000. But I consider around 1400 kilometers per hour to be the premier turning capabilities for this plane. Like, you want to be around that speed. I'm going to show you a few clips of the defensive capability of the F15C when you're going against somebody who's actually pretty good at the game. They're pretty decent at the game. And you know what you're doing. I want you to watch very closely what I do with my speed here in just a second. In the next clip, you'll see me dump all of my speed and roll around, basically resetting the fight or putting it into a neutral position. If you'll notice, we're not only neutral, but I also have all of my speed back from forcing the overshoot. I get a head-on pass, but it's not good enough yet. My next pass, I think I'm going to go for it. Playing for SASM damage, but I'm not really going for SASM damage. I'm mainly just trying to knock them off their rocker for a little bit. The key thing here is you're constantly managing your speed and the position of your opponent, so you're doing well regardless.
It's mostly just a,
Linkstore can throw out as many HCAs as he wants, like none of them are going to touch me as long as I'm moving quickly enough. I'm actually setting up for another overshoot. This next one doesn't work and he gets some free gun damage off of it, but the point is I've dragged the fight down to its knees and we're basically going to try standing up again. I get my speed back a lot quicker than he does. This right here is like a prime example of why I use the aileron rolls, is you get a nice amount of gun defense.
I think I'm going to try and speed up again.
Here I'm using gravity to point my plane straight up. I'm going to stall out and try shoving some SASMs into his face when he comes around. You can see how much speed he's got, so I'm pretty confident he's not going to be able to hit me. The hard part is I'm going to have to stack my speed back up and basically leave him behind me for a little bit as I try to do some more tricky stuff. But forcing overshoots and doing head-ons is pretty much the only way you're ever going to land damage as the F15C. I've bored Linkstore here badly enough to where he's going to be fighting me at my own game, which is head-on passes. With SASM, I can put up a pretty decent fight against high-capacity anti-airs. Bop.
Yeah, the thing I mentioned about not being able to close calls with SASMs is really coming into play here.
You'll also notice that I'm at the very top of the map, which lets me do pretty tight turns at ridiculous speeds. So I'm trying to press every single energy advantage I have against this low-speed turning plane.
Yeah. It's a matter of timing, though.
Dead. Huh.
Of course, the problem is with just playing at being a high-energy plane is that, if you actually want to do anything, you do just kind of go back to being, low energy, high turn rate. And then this starts happening again, which is, yeah, it's a bit of a mismatch.
The rest of the fight is just me defending, I think, but you can see how strong and defensive this plane can be when you really know what you're doing and you have a bunch of hours playing it. I wanted to say thank you to everyone for watching my video about the F-15 and pretty much my mindset whenever I'm using it. The next part of this video, I'm going to be talking about some of the builds that I use, and I'll probably talk about the YF-23 a little bit more, but I already have a couple of sniping videos on that detailing the kind of play style. I don't do a
Nice
lot of
trade.
commentary, but you basically see the idea. It's really simple to use. Hey guys, I was going to talk about some of the builds that I had for the high turning or the low speed high turning planes. And this is what I use for the F15. It's not my best plane. I don't use it very often. I'd much rather use the Rafale, but the F15E and the Rafale perform almost pretty much the same. I've had fights with people that are using the F15 and me using the Rafale, and we've actually met at stalemates before. I use the variable cycle engines because you want the raw acceleration that comes out of it. You also want the slightly increased top speed for whenever you're trying to drag someone around and you don't mind them being behind you for a little bit. And you basically later on you want to trade that speed for much more turning ability whenever you finally do want to try to make them overshoot. The ECU, basically, you can substitute this for Light Blisk level 2 as well, but I like the ECU on this plane in specific because sometimes you want to hang out at low speeds and just let the 6Ams do the work for you. Flaps 3, SM2, those two are pretty much mandatory on any kind of build you're ever going to make. I like to take the high power enhanced shells because quite often you get the advantage and you have nothing you can do with the advantage except try to gun them down with it. And you can't hit them with 6Ams, but you can hit them with your guns. So you're going to want every single point of gun damage to count for you. For the 6Ams, you're going to want the prox fuses. I take the takeoff weight augmentation because I'm slinging these bad boys left and right. And I take the lock-on speed. I don't need lock-on speed. Sorry about that. Actually, my entire build's actually wrong. I'm sorry, guys. I'm pretty tired about it. But yeah, that's normally what it's supposed to be. You don't have anything else to put on. You just put on takeoff weight. And it should help out a bunch. Or you can switch your bullets to level 1. It's up to you. So with that all going on, for my Rafale M build, I put on both Blisk and VCE for maximum amount of acceleration. Whenever you're very low speed with the Rafale, it's pretty hard to get it back up anyways. And whenever you dump all your speed, you're going to want that super hard turn. I haven't really found a good use for ECU on this thing. Every time I try using it, I always come back to Blisk because I want the acceleration. As usual, you dump everything into special weapons and you have your really strong guns. I don't really run armor on this thing because, I mean, if you're getting hit, you're doing something wrong. But if you are new and you're okay with getting hit or you're not as experienced, you can probably take off Blisk and put armor on. And you might get about the same amount of acceleration and performance out of it. With the MiG-21, it's actually pretty weird because there was this Japanese guy I used to play on PS4, and he would kick the shit out of me every time I would try to use a MiG-21 against him. So I eventually got his build from him, and it's pretty weird. He has a ridiculous amount of acceleration on it, along with ECU, and the 2 homing parts for missiles. And his main weapon is obviously the machine gun pods. And you're going to want to focus on using your rudders as well whenever you turn. And it's really strong. It's a very strong plane in 2000. I haven't found anything that's able to outturn this absolute monstrosity of a plane. So with all that done, I'm going to give you the builds here on the F-15s that I typically use. I don't typically use this F-15, so I'm going to show you the builds that I make. This goes for the F-15C and J. They're pretty much the exact same frame in terms of performance. So with the F-15, I take the SASMs, and you're probably going to be surprised that I take the air brakes, the flap actuators, the super ailerons, and the super mobility. The reason why I take the air brakes is because the acceleration, the base acceleration on the F-15, I think is one of the best in the game. It's really hard to outmatch and outdo unless the other enemy plane is specifically running VCE and a Blisk stack. So If they're not running both of those, you can more than likely out accelerate them. I don't take gun power on this thing because it turns so slowly that, I'm sorry, you're typically not going to be able to get that gun angle on them because your plane just doesn't turn that hard. So what I do is I buff up my regular missiles to harass and head on with, and I use SASNs with the homing so that they typically hit for the head on passes. And that's how I usually set up my F-15. My build for my YF-23 is pretty much stacked for sniping as well. For some reason, I have high gen pressure components. I don't run armor on this because you shouldn't really be being seen. But if you want to actually dogfight in it, it's still pretty strong. You play it almost exactly the same as the F-15. I use the damage boost so that pretty much anything I hit dies unless they're wearing armor. I use the special missile lock-on range because after a certain point that the missile has been flying for so long, the homing is just going to skyrocket for the high velocity anti-airs. This applies to lambs too, but they got a greater range they got to run. So after it hits that skyrocket of homing, it just goes straight to their plane and hits it. Like they pretty much can't really do anything about it. I also give it extra homing, and I put on the anti-radar so that I can see other people who are using HVAs and fight them as well if I want to. But that's usually a waste of time. At that point, it's just a DPS race. But yeah, this is pretty much my pure YF-23 build. And that's about all I got to say. Thank you for watching the video. Thank you for supporting me. Thanks for subscribing. If you guys have anything else that you want to hear me talk about or give you some feedback on, you can also send me your clips, your videos, and I can tell you what you're doing wrong, what you could do better. And thank you all for watching very much. I really do appreciate it. I could also always use more subscribers, and if you guys want to see anything like stream-wise or something like that, just let me know. I don't have a problem. I'm also on my phone a lot, so if you have a comment or a quick question for me, I typically get back to those within 30 minutes or so if I'm awake, and I check them every time I get up in the mornings. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, and if you want to see more, let me know.